I can still pinpoint the second everything shattered. It wasn't some explosive argument or dramatic scene, just a soft little ping from my wife's phone while she was rinsing off in the shower. I'd never been the type to snoop through Haley's messages. After 15 years together, I honestly believed our trust was rock solid. But that night, something in the air felt wrong. Off. Like the room was holding its breath. Haley had been slipping away from me for months. Late nights at work, weekend strategy sessions, a sudden obsession with her looks, every cliché in the book. And I ignored them. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe they could apply to us. Her phone lit up on the dresser while she showered. A text preview blinked on the screen. Reservation confirmed at Vento, Friday, 8 p.m. He's going to love the corner table. I knew better than to touch it. That line between trust and suspicion, I'd never crossed it. But something ancient kicked in. A feeling in my gut that whispered, this is it. Before I realized what I was doing, my hands moved on their own. The passcode? Our son's birthday. The irony burned. What I uncovered wasn't just dinner plans. It was a double life, carefully curated and cruelly hidden. Messages, selfies, conversations that sounded like a love story, but not ours. His name was Derek. He was in her firm's finance team. Predictably younger. Obviously fit. And married because of course he was. I sat there frozen, her phone in my grip like a live wire, barely able to catch my breath. 15 years together, our house, our inside jokes, the little routines we swore would never get old, suddenly they all felt fake. Like props on a stage I didn't realize I was standing on. Babe, have you seen my green blouse? Haley's voice came from the bathroom, casual, warm, as if she hadn't just torn a hole through our life with every message she sent. I set the phone back exactly where I found it, my hands shaking. Second shelf, behind the scarves, I called out, surprised at how calm I sounded when everything inside me had just crumbled. That night, I lay in bed next to Haley, listening to her steady, unbothered breathing. My mind was anything but calm. I wanted to shake her awake, demand the truth, force her to say his name out loud. But I didn't. Something deeper, pride maybe, or just cold strategy, held me in place. Why start a war I couldn't win with emotion alone? She'd only lie anyway. The next morning, I played my part. Kissed her goodbye like it was just another Tuesday. Knock em dead at the budget meeting, I said, even though I knew damn well there was no meeting. Just more lies. As soon as she was gone, I called in sick to the consulting firm. And for the first time in my life, I became a detective in my own marriage. It wasn't even hard. Haley had gotten sloppy, too comfortable in the shadow of my trust. Her email password hadn't changed in years. Her calendar laid everything bare, including the Friday night dinner at Vento, a high-end spot we used to celebrate anniversaries. The same dinner she told me was for entertaining a potential investor. Then came the name that made it all real. Derek Monroe. A thread of emails between them, subtle but undeniable. It only took a minute on social media to find him. The guy looked like a walking magazine ad, successful, smug, and married, of course. His wife's name was Natalie, and she ran a yoga studio across town. My first thought was to blow it all up, message Natalie right then and there. But I held back. Rage was easy. Revenge, that required planning. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring into my untouched coffee as the idea took shape. If Haley wanted to play fantasy over filet mignon, then so be it. She'd still get her big dinner. Just not the one she expected. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it, dry, bitter, echoing through the silence of a house that suddenly felt like a stranger's. That same kitchen, the one where Haley once promised me forever. Where we'd whispered about kids we never ended up having. Where we mapped out a future that now felt like it had been written in smoke. You want dinner, Haley? I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Then let me give you a night you'll never forget. I picked up my phone and called Vento. The maitre d' was more than accommodating. Yes, they had another table still available for Friday night. Yes, I could request it be placed near the private booth reserved under Haley's company name. I told him it was a professional dinner too, potential for networking, maybe merging tables later in the evening. He understood perfectly. Next came the tricky part, getting in touch with Derek Monroe without raising any alarms. Lucky for me, being a consultant with ties to local development firms gave me a believable excuse. I drafted a crisp, professional email inviting him to speak at one of our firm's community growth panels. I praised his creative vision in architectural planning and suggested we meet for dinner to discuss the logistics. I casually mentioned I had a reservation at Vento on Friday and hoped that might work for him. His reply came quickly. Courteous, intrigued, and completely unaware. He agreed to meet me. What he didn't know was that just a few feet away, his wife would be sharing wine with mine, tucked into a cozy booth for two. As I shut my laptop, something inside me crystallized. The gut punch of betrayal had stopped knocking the air out of me. Now it was solidifying into something sharper. I'd spent 15 years being the steady one, the patient husband, the understanding partner. I'd carried our relationship while Haley wove her web of lies. But Friday? Friday would rewrite everything. Those 3 days leading up to Friday felt endless. I drifted through them like a ghost haunting my own house, watching Haley like I'd never really seen her before. How had I been so blind? The way she angled her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. The hushed conversations taken behind closed doors. The new perfume, the updated wardrobe, details I once chalked up to work stress or seasonal change. "I've got that investor dinner Friday night," she said over breakfast Thursday morning, her tone breezy, casual. "Don't wait up, it might go late." I nodded, spreading jam on my toast with practiced calm. "Big pitch for the expansion project?" I asked. "Exactly," she replied, visibly relaxing at my nonchalant reaction. Probably thought I'd swallowed her lie whole. "Just boring networking stuff." "I might head out myself," I added. "An old colleague wants to grab a drink, catch up." She barely looked up. "Sounds good, babe." 15 years together, and she couldn't even feign interest in what I was doing for half a minute. Had it always been like this? Had I been so committed to the image of a strong, happy marriage that I tuned out her detachment? That evening, I found myself standing alone in our walk-in closet, staring at the man in the mirror. 45. Still fit. The gym hadn't let me down. My hair was graying at the temples, sure, but it suited me. There was a quiet confidence in my face, even if it had been bruised by betrayal. But I wasn't Derek, the younger guy with perfect skin and that effortless swagger. I caught myself, let out a breath, and shut that thought down. No. This wasn't about age or looks or any of that shallow crap. Haley didn't cheat because I wasn't enough. She cheated because she thought she'd never get caught. This was never about age or anything I lacked. This was about Haley, her selfishness, her entitlement, her disregard for everything we'd built. I'd poured myself into this marriage. I backed her career while quietly growing my own. Uprooted our life 3 times for her promotions. Held her through her mother's final months. Looked past the little cracks that should have warned me, the sudden work emergencies, the missed birthdays, the cold silence when I needed connection most. When Friday finally came, it brought a strange sense of focus. I dressed with intention, a charcoal gray blazer over a crisp white shirt, tailored slacks, and cufflinks Haley had given me on our 10th anniversary. I even pulled out the deep brown dress shoes I rarely wore, the ones she once teased looked too extra for me. Left the office early and stopped by the barber. A fresh cut, a touch of cologne. The barber commented on how relaxed I seemed. If only he knew the kind of fire I was sitting on. Back at home, I packed a small overnight bag and slid it into the trunk. I knew one thing for certain, whatever happened tonight, I wasn't coming back under that roof. I pulled up to Vento a good half hour before the reservation. The maitre d' greeted me like an old accomplice, his tone low and respectful. He walked me through the setup. My table had a clear, direct view of the private booth Haley reserved. They wouldn't spot me unless they really looked, but I'd see everything. "Your guest called, he's en route," the maitre d' said, offering a polite nod. I settled in at the bar, ordered a martini, and watched the front doors like a man waiting on judgment. Haley arrived first, early by about 15 minutes. She looked polished, glowing even. Nervous energy crackled in the way she moved, the way she kept adjusting her bracelet, smoothing her skirt. She wore the same emerald blouse I once said made her eyes look like forest glass, something she'd clearly saved for someone else's admiration. The host led Derek straight to the private booth. 10 minutes later, she arrived. Natalie was everything I expected and everything I dreaded. Young, striking, the kind of woman who carried herself like the world had always said yes to her. She wore a deep burgundy dress that clung in all the right places, moving with the kind of ease that comes from never second-guessing your worth. Haley stood as she approached, and the look on her face, it wasn't just affection. It was worship. She reached for Natalie's hands, leaned in, and kissed her softly, deliberately. The kind of kiss that used to be mine. Something broke inside me then. Not just because she was with someone else, but because of how happy she looked. Truly, deeply happy. The version of her that smiled across that table, glowing, laughing, was a stranger. And that stranger had replaced the woman I once loved. Ryan Evans? I turned to see Derek Monroe standing beside me. Early 40s, built like a guy who actually used his gym membership, dark hair just starting to gray, a calm presence. He looked exactly like the kind of man you'd trust with your house keys and your future. "Yes," I said, offering a handshake. "Thanks for coming on short notice. I really appreciate it." "Please call me Derek," he replied, firm grip, genuine tone. "And I'm intrigued. Your email about the development panel caught my eye. If only he knew. The maitre d' returned and guided us to our table, the one with the perfect vantage point. Just far enough that our spouses wouldn't see us unless they scanned the room, but close enough that every stolen glance could cut like glass. I tried to focus on the task at hand, to act like this was just a regular business dinner. Derek opened his menu, still chatting easily about zoning permits and sustainable construction. Meanwhile, across the room, Haley poured Derek a glass of champagne, leaned in, said something that made her lover throw his head back and laugh, careless and free. So tell me more about this panel, Derek said, unfolding his napkin, eyes full of curiosity. I pulled myself back, slipping into my practiced spiel, how merging architecture and economic theory offered students a broader view of urban planning. But my attention kept drifting. I saw Haley slip her hand under the table, her fingers brushing Derek's knee. Intimate. Familiar. Ryan? Derek's voice cut gently through my fog. You okay? You seem a little off. I reached for my water. Yeah. Just tired. Semester wrap-up always hits hard. He nodded with understanding and launched into a description of his newest project, some green-certified apartment complex near the river. He was smart, driven, the kind of man you'd be proud to introduce to your family. And 20 feet away, his wife was feeding mine a forkful of shrimp risotto like they were on a honeymoon. I've been rambling, Derek said with a sheepish grin. Tell me more about what you do. I began outlining my recent work on urban policy modeling when I noticed Natalie sliding out of the booth. Bathroom break classic. And just like that, the door cracked open. My chance. Would you excuse me for a moment? I asked politely. Derek stood like a gentleman as I rose. I didn't have a plan. Not really. But somehow my feet knew exactly where to go. We collided just as she was rounding the corner from the restroom. Natalie stopped dead. The second her eyes locked on mine, I saw it recognition. She'd seen photos of me on Haley's desk. She knew. You're Haley's husband, she said quietly, almost like she couldn't believe it was really happening. And you're Derek's, I replied, my gaze flicking to our table where Derek still sat, blissfully unaware. Her face drained of color. Looking back, I'd been bracing for this moment since I saw that first message on Haley's phone. But nothing could have prepared me for the raw mess of emotion that followed. Please, Natalie whispered, glancing nervously between me and Derek. Not here. Why not here? I asked, my voice even, like I'd rehearsed it. It's perfect, isn't it? Romantic ambience, fine wine, stolen time. Seems like you've had a lovely evening. She reached out, her perfectly painted nails brushing my arm. Ryan, I can explain. Can you? I gently pulled away. Can you explain why you're sleeping with my wife? Or why you're betraying that man back there, the one who thinks you're out for a harmless dinner? Tears welled in her eyes, threatening to spill. It's complicated. It always is, I said, not unkindly. Marriage promises the tiny everyday things that are supposed to mean something. Also complicated. Behind her, I caught movement. Haley had seen us. Her expression changed in an instant, first confusion, then fear. She rose halfway from the booth, unsure whether to step forward or disappear. Natalie turned slightly, sensing the shift. Her voice trembled. What do you want? That question stopped me cold. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? To see them squirm the way I had in the dark? I paused, heart pounding. I want honesty, I said at last. Something that's been missing from my marriage longer than I was willing to admit. I looked past Natalie to where Derek now sat, frowning in our direction. Your husband seems like a decent man, I added. Does he deserve this? Her face crumpled, voice barely audible. No, he doesn't. Neither did I. That's when Haley appeared behind her, rattled, pale, panic written across every line of her face. Ryan, what are you doing here? I didn't blink. Having dinner, I said evenly. Same as you. This isn't, she started. What it looks like. I cut in. We're way past that line. Just then, Derek approached, concern tightening his brow. Ryan? Everything okay? Do you know these two? Time stopped. Haley's eyes were wide, pleading. Natalie was frozen beside her, lips parted but silent. In that moment, I could have detonated it all, blown their little illusion to pieces, let the whole room witness the fallout. But something inside me had shifted this past week. What they feared most wasn't noise. It was composure. Derek, I said calmly, turning toward him. I'd like you to meet my wife. Haley Evans. Confusion flickered in his eyes as he looked at her. Then they slid to Natalie. And I believe you already know Natalie. It hit him like a wave. His jaw tensed. Breath caught. All that careful structure behind his expression collapsed into one simple, shattered truth. Natalie, his voice barely cleared a whisper. She couldn't even meet his gaze. How long? He asked. But no one spoke. The silence answered for us. This wasn't the moment I'd fantasized about. There was no sense of triumph, no satisfying eruption. Just a heavy, quiet sorrow. His grief mirrored mine. I glanced around. People had started to take notice, glances, murmurs. Maybe we should talk somewhere more private, I said gently. A quiet end to a loud betrayal. Haley finally found her voice. Ryan, please, can we just talk? Oh, we'll talk, I said, calm but firm. But not here. And not just you and me. The maitre d' approached, having clearly picked up on the rising tension. Is everything all right, sir? I gave him a polite smile. Actually, there's been a change in plans. Would it be possible to combine our reservations? Seems the four of us need to have a conversation. He blinked, quickly masking his surprise. Of course, sir. Right this way. He led us to a private dining room, discreet and far from the curious stares of the main floor. A quiet space for loud truths. Within minutes, he'd arranged a table for four and slipped out, leaving us in a heavy silence. Haley and Natalie sat on one side. Derek and I took the other. The divide was physical, emotional, undeniable. How long have you known? Haley asked quietly. Does it really matter? I replied. She hesitated. I guess not. Derek hadn't said a word. His eyes were locked on Natalie, the weight of his silence more damning than anything I could have said. Were you ever going to tell me? He asked her, voice low but steady. Natalie looked wrecked. Her mascara ran in streaks, her hands trembled on the tablecloth. I don't know, she whispered. That's the thing about affairs, I said. They live in a bubble. No real consequences, no decisions. Just borrowed time and lies. Until the truth catches up. Haley turned to me, stunned by how composed I was. You're incredibly calm. What did you expect? I asked, keeping my voice level. A wine glass in your face? A screaming match to make me look crazy? Something dramatic enough to hand you the narrative that I'm unstable and you're the victim. Her face flushed. She didn't argue. Couldn't. I've had 3 days, I continued. 3 days to realize I've been living in a one-sided marriage. To understand that the person I trusted most saw me as a background character in their secret story. No one spoke. The silence said it all. 3 days. That's how long I'd spent combing through 15 years of memories, tracing every lie Haley chose over the truth. Every moment where she could have been honest and instead looked me in the eye and gave me fiction. 3 days? Natalie's head jerked up, eyes wide. You've known for 3 days and set this whole thing up? I turned to her. Yes. And you know what's really fascinating? In all that time, neither of you noticed a thing. I looked at Haley now. You came home each night, kissed my cheek like clockwork, asked how my day was, never waiting for the answer. Same routine. You told me about tonight's investor dinner without even blinking. No hesitation. No guilt. I didn't want to hurt you, she said softly, almost pathetically. Derek let out a sharp, humorless laugh. That's rich? You didn't want to hurt him? While you were sleeping with my wife. A knock interrupted us. The waiter stepped in briefly to place water and a bread basket on the table. He was gone in seconds, the tension thick enough to taste. I'd plotted this encounter with precision, the seating, the timing, even Derek's presence. But no amount of preparation could dull the blow of seeing it all laid bare. The weight of it, the years of lies, the gut-wrenching truth that my marriage had been running on fumes for longer than I'd admitted to myself. What happens now? Natalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small keycard. I placed it on the table. I booked a room across the street, I said quietly. I won't be sleeping in our bed tonight, Haley. Her face twisted in panic. Ryan, please? I'm not done. She fell silent. For 15 years, I've been the steady one. The supportive partner. I followed your job across cities. I forgave your late nights, your vague explanations, your emotional absence. That ends now. I pushed the keycard forward and stood. Derek, I'm sorry you had to find out like this. You didn't deserve it. None of us did. He nodded, jaw tight, still processing. Haley, I continued. I'll be at my brother's through the weekend. When I return Monday, I expect you to be gone. Take what you need. We'll figure out the rest later. You're kicking me out, she said, stunned. No, I replied. You made the choice the day you decided our vows were optional. Then I turned to Natalie. He's all yours now. No more sneaking around. And with that, I walked away, leaving behind the wreckage they'd built together. No more thrill of secrecy. No more hiding behind shadows. Just the cold truth of a woman who discards vows when they become inconvenient. I turned to go, then paused at the door, hand resting on the handle. Oh, and dinner's on Haley's company card, I said without turning around. You both seem familiar with how that works. And with that, I walked out of Vento. I didn't stop at the valet. Didn't even glance at my car. I crossed the street, head high, into the Grand Meridian Hotel. Only when I reached the room, a luxury suite with sweeping views of the city I deliberately overpaid for, did the mask finally crack. And I broke. Not with quiet tears, but with raw, aching sobs that came from somewhere buried and primal. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. For the 15 years I'd spent believing in something that no longer existed. For the life I'd built with a woman who'd been living two separate realities and I only belonged to one. I don't know how long I stayed there, back against the side of the bed, grief pouring out like a storm that had waited too long to come. When it finally passed, I felt hollow but strangely clear. Then came a soft knock at the door. I froze. For a moment I expected Haley, ready to beg, to explain, to rewrite history. I looked through the peephole and found Derek. He looked just as wrecked as I felt. I opened the door a few inches. "Ryan," he said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry to just show up. I couldn't go home. And I didn't know where else to go." I hesitated, then pulled the door open wider. After what we'd just been through, formality felt like a joke. "How'd you find me?" "You mentioned crossing the street earlier." "Only one option." I asked the front desk if Ryan Evans had checked in. "And they just gave you my room?" "I might have implied I was your husband," he admitted sheepishly. "Under normal circumstances, that might have raised red flags. Tonight? It made perfect sense. We were casualties of the same explosion." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I'm a mess." He glanced at my tear-streaked face and gave a tired smile. "Join the club." We sat in the armchairs by the window, the city glowing beneath us, neither of us speaking for a while. Then he asked, "Did you know? Before the dinner plans, I mean. Did you have any idea?" I thought about it, really thought. Part of me always knew. Haley had grown distant, colder, but I didn't want to face it. Derek nodded slowly. "Natalie's been pulling away for months. Weekend yoga retreats, late meetings. I never questioned it. I trusted her completely." "That's how it works," I said quietly. "They use our trust as cover." "What are you going to do now?" he asked. I took a slow breath. Exactly what I said I would. I'm not taking her back. Just like that? After 15 years? "The 15 years are why I can't," I said. "This wasn't a single mistake. It was a pattern. A choice. And based on the messages I read, it's been going on for almost a year." He flinched. "A year? Jesus. What about you?" I asked. He rubbed his face, weary. 7 years of marriage. No kids, thank God. But still. I don't know. I can't look at her the same again. Not after what I saw. Not after how she looked at Haley. His voice broke slightly, and without thinking, I reached over and took his hand. Just human contact. Two people trying not to come apart completely. We stayed like that for a while. Eventually, just after midnight, Derek stood. I should check into my place across the street. Get some sleep. We talked for hours. Not just about betrayal, but about our lives, our jobs, the things we still believed in. Two strangers linked by one terrible truth, finding a quiet kind of solace in each other's company. The next morning, I woke to pounding at the door. "James?" He looked wrecked, disheveled, eyes hollow, still wearing last night's clothes. "Ryan, please," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside slowly, keeping distance between us. "Did you come alone? Or is Natalie waiting in the car?" He winced. "It's over. I ended it last night. It was a mistake. The worst mistake of my life. A year-long mistake," I said flatly. His eyes widened. "You know. I saw the messages. The weekend trips you called conferences. The apartment you were viewing together." He collapsed into the nearest chair, head in his hands. "It wasn't real. What Natalie and I had, it was a fantasy. A way to escape, not something I wanted forever. And that's supposed to make it better?" "No," he said, defeated. "But 15 years, Ryan. We've been through so much. You can't just throw that away." "I didn't," I said softly. "You did. Every time you chose her over me. Every time you looked me in the eyes and lied." "I'll do anything," he whispered. "Anything to fix this. Therapy, complete transparency, whatever you need," Haley pleaded. "Just tell me what to do." I looked at the woman I once would have done anything for. Tried to see in her face the partner I thought I knew. But all I saw now was the person who'd torn that trust apart, one lie at a time. "What's really changed, Haley?" I asked quietly. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." "That's not true," she insisted. "I've been sick with guilt. I was going to end it." "When?" I snapped. "Before or after the Cabo trip you booked for next month? Before or after the apartment you put a deposit on?" Her face folded in on itself, devastated. "How can I fix this?" she whispered. "You can't," I said simply. "Some things don't get fixed. They get faced. They get left behind." You're really walking away? Her voice trembled. Just like that. No, not just like that. After a year of lies. After realizing the woman I built a life with was capable of betraying me every day and still asking how I wanted my eggs. She tried again, desperate now. What about our friends? Our families? The scandal? The embarrassment of divorce? I blinked. Embarrassment? That's your concern. Our reputation, she corrected. We've built something. People admire us, eh? I let out a dry, bitter laugh. Already handled that. Called your mom this morning. Her face went white. You didn't. Oh, I did. Also your brother. And Mark and Sarah. Told them exactly why I won't be standing beside you anymore. You had no right, she snapped, voice rising. No right to tell the truth? I said, eyes locked on hers. I spent years protecting your image, shielding us. But I'm not going to be the villain in your story just because it's more convenient. She shot to her feet. This isn't over. I stayed seated, unmoved. Yes, Haley. It is. You're not thinking straight, Haley said. No, I replied, calm and certain. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. The locks will be changed by Monday. You've got the weekend to take what you need. You can't just throw me out of my own house. Our house, I corrected. The one I designed with you. The one whose mortgage I've split down the middle for 15 years. We'll talk finances later, I added. But I'm not leaving. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, then flipped it face down. Is that Natalie? I asked. Already missing you? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Go, I said, rising from the chair. She needs you more than I do right now. Haley left without another word. I stood alone in the hotel suite, expecting to feel shattered, hollow, furious. But what hit me instead was something quieter. Something lighter. Relief. Like I'd finally set down a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. My phone rang. Derek. Just checking in, he said when I picked up. How are you holding up? Better than I thought I would, I admitted. Haley stopped by earlier. Yeah, he said. Natalie's been calling nonstop. I haven't answered. What are you going to do? He exhaled. Honestly? I think I already decided last night. I deserve better than someone who can look me in the eye and lie for a year. You do, I said. You really do. There was a pause, then his tone shifted gentler. Have you eaten yet? No. I could use a friendly face this morning, he said. Breakfast? I glanced in the mirror. My eyes were still swollen, but something behind them looked different. Clearer. Steadier. Yeah, I said, soft but sure. Breakfast sounds perfect. The weeks that followed were a blur, lawyers, mediators, dividing up the fragments of a shared life. Haley didn't make it easy. She swung between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of blowing things out of proportion. But I stayed firm. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was rebuilding. On my own terms. Natalie moved out of state within a month, couldn't take the whispers, the silent judgment in our tightly woven circle. According to mutual acquaintances, Haley tried to keep their affair going, but it didn't last. The fantasy couldn't survive in the daylight. Derek and I kept in touch. At first, it was just mutual support, helping each other through the bureaucratic and emotional chaos of parallel divorces. But over time, it became something else. A real friendship. One built not on shared trauma, but on shared understanding. I never really thanked you, Derek said one evening 6 months after that unforgettable night at Vento. We were walking along the riverfront, the summer sun slipping low and painting the water in gold. For what? I asked. For having the courage to face it. To bring it all into the open. To not just look the other way. I thought for a moment. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt cornered. Desperate. Whatever you felt, he said, you saved me. If it weren't for you, I might still be living in a lie. Pretending everything was fine. It was strange, the way life's most painful chapters could uncover hidden blessings. Through the collapse of my marriage, I'd rediscovered something I didn't even know I'd lost, my self-respect. My clarity. My strength. I learned who my real friends were, the ones who showed up, who didn't flinch or pass judgment. And I found Derek. Not as some rebound, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as something new. Something real. Are you happy, Ryan? He asked as we stopped to watch a sailboat drift by in the glowing water. Not always, I said, truthfully. Some days, I admitted, I still mourn the life I thought I had. The future I planned. Derek nodded, the setting sun catching in his eyes. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. But mostly, I continued, I'm grateful. Grateful for the truth no matter how painful. Grateful for the chance to start over, to build something real instead of clinging to a comfortable illusion. To truth, then, he said, gently taking my hand. I looked at him, but in my mind I saw the man I used to be, the Ryan from a year ago. The one who believed so deeply in the life he had built who couldn't see the cracks forming beneath his feet. I thought about the man who had sat on a hotel room floor, sobbing, convinced that everything meaningful in his life had just ended. You know what I learned from all this? I said quietly. We're stronger than we think. When everything breaks apart, we don't have to. Derek gave my hand a soft squeeze. No, we don't. Exactly 1 year after that dinner at Vento, I saw Haley again. It was at a retirement party for a former colleague, neutral ground, too public for drama. She looked older, thinner. The tension in her eyes hadn't faded. We made it through some polite small talk before she pulled me aside. I never really apologized, she said quietly. Not properly. I was too busy trying to protect myself. And now? I asked. Now I know what I threw away, she said. And I'm sorry, Ryan. Really deeply sorry. To my own surprise, I didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. Because I hadn't just survived. I'd rebuilt. I hope you find happiness, Haley, I said gently. She looked toward the far side of the room where Derek stood in conversation with a few faculty members, laughter in his eyes. You seem to have found yours, she said. I'm building something new, I replied. Day by day. Later, as Derek and I walked beneath a canopy of stars, the city soft with night sounds, I found myself thinking about the strange, twisting path that had brought us here, the betrayals, the unraveling, the quiet strength it took to start again. What are you thinking about? He asked, his hand brushing mine. How the worst night of my life somehow led to this, I said. How sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. He stopped and turned to me, the streetlights catching in his eyes. I'm glad you reserved that table next to theirs, he said with a quiet smile. So am I whispered. Because sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the painful beginning of a better one.